Elliott, what? Addiction specialist. Coming clean with me.
Hello, my name is Elliott Wald, addiction specialist, and welcome to Coming Clean with Me. And today my special guest in the studio is Tal Booker. Tal's 30 years old, formerly a fashion accessory designer, and now he's a thriving, creative tattoo artist. Not only that, I'd say he's an artist. So Tal, thank you for coming here today.
Pleasure.
Appreciate you being in the studio. So let's just dive straight in. Tell me about, growing up. What it was like where you grew up?
I grew up in a loving family, a family of 3 boys for a long time. I was the middle of 2 brothers. My sister came along when I think I was 12, lived in North London. Both parents were relatively present, worked a lot, never kind of lacked anything, to my knowledge. And it was from what I remember a relatively happy childhood.
Quite a tight family.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And tell me about when did you first start using and how that came about?
So I never touched anything until I was, I think I was 17. Never touched alcohol, never, smoked weed.
Didn't
whatever.
even drink?
I always had this, I think it was a fear of kind of being out of control. And, was always taught drugs are bad, drinking's bad, all of that sort of stuff. My dad never drunk. Don't really remember seeing my mum drink either. So I wasn't really around anything. And then when I was 17, I remember smoking weed for the first time with a few friends from school. And if I remember correctly, it was around the same time that my parents got divorced and my cousin who I was quite close with was 19, passed away. So it was a very kind of similar time that all of those things happened. And I don't really remember doing it for any other reason other than, being young, wanting to try something new and kind of give it a go. But, from the day that I started, I smoked weed for the first time, I didn't really stop. And that was 17. And then I tried coke for the first time when I was 21.
Where were you?
I was at a friend's house. I think it was either Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. I'd just broken up with an ex-girlfriend and kind of took that pretty hard, and just felt that I needed something to bring me out of myself. I was never particularly comfortable in social situations. I didn't really enjoy going out partying at all, and everyone was doing it, and I thought this was a way for me to be more like them, and to kind of come out my shell a little bit, to chat to people more, to maybe have a little dance, to do all the things.
So in other words, what you're saying is when you first started using cocaine,
yeah,
it gave you confidence to do things, to talk to people?
I thought it did. And, I don't think it ever really worked. I thought that's what it was supposed to do. But pretty quickly it did the opposite. It made me very insular. I couldn't talk to people. I was more hyper aware than I'd ever been before, considering I was quite a hyper aware individual. So it really flipped it on its head and kind of took all the things that I thought I wanted away from me that I probably already had, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And left me with none of it and more, really.
And initially it was social at the beginning.
Yeah.
How quickly did that escalate in terms of your usage?
Immediately, I think. I remember going out that first time, and then after that I was always trying to conceal the fact that I was using it. I was the kind of person that would go out, would tell people I didn't have drugs on me so I could use their drugs and use my own, and then I'd leave the night early after using their drugs to go home and use on my own.
Wow.
And that happened, I'd say within a year, if not less.
So you'd be out.
Yeah.
So you went from zero to being out with other people, using their supply, going home using your supply, just wanting to be on your own.
Yeah.
Escalated fast.
Very, very fast. Yeah. I was addicted from day one. Right. It was all I could think about. The next time I'd pick up, the next time I'd have an opportunity to use, publicly, and then it became something that I didn't care about using publicly. I just wanted to use on my own.
Yeah, that's classic,
Yeah.
right? You know, I call it the most sociable drug that becomes the most anti-sociable drug.
Absolutely.
That's what happened to you.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, there's nothing special and different about my addiction or my using. It was textbook from day one. You know, all the things that they tell you you're going to end up doing, lie, steal and chill, lie, steal and cheat, I was doing within a matter of months.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
And how frequently were you using from that go-get?
I mean, from what I remember, it was pretty much every day. And I say it was every day unless I was either out of the country or asleep. There was no in between. I mean, there were times when I couldn't afford to, and you know that led me on to other addictions, which I'm sure we'll get onto. But any opportunity I had, I was using. You know, I'd pick up at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday when I had work at 8. You know, there was no stopping me at all.
It's interesting you use that word opportunity.
Yeah,
Because I think a lot of users are opportunists.
for sure.
That was you.
For sure. Any opportunity, any opportunity I had to use, I would take it. You know, family events, you know, socializing, work commitments. I took any waking moment I had to use, I'd take it.
What do you think you were escaping from?
I think a lot of things. I think pain. I had a lot of pain. I didn't really know what that pain was. Confusion about who I was, where I fit in the world, family stuff, you know, the pain of losing my cousin, the pain of my parents being divorced, the kind of, I always felt somewhat lost in between my brothers. You know, they were both quite outgoing and successful, and I hadn't quite found my thing, and so I felt very much lost in between that.
Your brothers are what ages between?
So I'm 30, my older brother is 31, and my younger brother's 28. So we're all very close in age. We were all very close socially. We went to school together. We had a lot of the same friends. We lived together from. We always lived together, but we moved out of my family home when I was, I think, 18, and we moved in together, just the three of us.
That's tight. That's close.
Yeah. I mean, we're still very close now. Me and my younger brother live together. My older brother moved out a few years ago, but you know we're still very close. And
what does your older brother do?
So he founded a water business called Cano Water, and you know is an entrepreneur and has his fingers in a lot of pies with regards to business stuff. My younger brother Eyal was a model and kind of influencer, and then went on reality TV and has kind of carved out his own path in TV and social media and stuff. And so I didn't find my thing up until.
Did that cause a lot of pressure internally?
Yeah, internally for sure. You know, I never really felt external pressure, but I think, you know, that the community that I grew up in, I always felt there were eyes on me as to what I was going to do, whether that's like a self-absorbed kind of idea. I definitely felt that. I didn't feel it from my family. You know, I always felt loved and kind of respected, but I think I wanted to be someone. I didn't know who I was or how I was going to be anything. And I, you know, kind of slipped into a hole.
Your escape?
Yeah.
You didn't have to look in the mirror not knowing who you were?
Yeah. Well, I became the addict. That's what I became. Yeah.
Right. And you were, you know, being at that young age and using, you're in that tribe of people that also used.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering that, you know, I know I'm jumping ahead and we're going to go back a bit, but I'm wondering, when you stopped using, did you detach from that tribe?
I think I detached from everything that I knew. I never had that many friends. I always felt on the outskirts of different friendship groups and kind of different people and communities, essentially. So by the time I started using heavily, I'd lost everyone anyway. So when I stopped using, it was more about rebuilding from scratch rather than moving away from people, because I'd already pushed everyone away by that point anyway. It was really just me and my brothers. had a couple of friends, but again, I'd kind of use them to use because I felt comfortable using with them.
Right.
They were the weed smokers. They were the ones that, you know, I could convince to get on it.
Were you the enabler?
I don't know if I was the enabler. Because I you know, I wasn't particularly outspoken or outgoing, so I was kind of the chameleon. I could get involved without drawing too much attention to myself, without convincing everyone to to use. It was kind of like a slight nudge in the right direction for me, so I didn't really have to do anything particularly outgoing, really.
When you were using and you were around other people,
Yeah.
did you tend to just stick to people who used?
Yes, I would say so. I didn't really involve myself in people that didn't use, because with that, you know, comes the shame of having to explain to people and having to show people who you really are.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have much of that, I don't think. I jumped from crowd to crowd before it got too obvious, I think.
So no one noticed.
So no one noticed. So when it became like a really regular, obvious thing, by that point I would have probably found a new friendship group that I could then pull it all back and start again.
So no one put you under the microscope?
No one ever put me under the microscope until the very end, even my family.
And during that period of doing it more and more frequently, what sort of quantity were you using?
So I didn't really have the luxury of money. So I remember picking up, I don't know, £40 worth every day.
Okay, 0.4.
Yeah. By the end of it couldn't have been further from coke. God knows what was in it. The dealers kind of sussed me out. They knew that I didn't really know what I wanted or what was good and what wasn't. But yeah, I'd say 0.4 at a push. I'd get, you know, a gram and a half, 2 grams if I just got paid, or, you know, when I was gambling, if I just had a bit of money come in. But it was like a small but constant quantity, because I didn't want to. I also had this financial fear that I would run out of money, which I did on multiple occasions. But then I had the fear of where that would lead me in terms of, you know, having to ask people for money or having to borrow or whatever, and then that would then shine a light on my position. So I didn't want to give anything away, so I tried really hard to manage it in kind of smaller doses.
Were you dry sniffing, or were you using alcohol with?
No, I was dry sniffing, and then I'd smoke weed to kind of bring me back down, and probably towards the end I started drinking a bit as well to kind of get all the feelings going. It got pretty messy by the end of it.
The alcohol to level yourself down, is that what you mean?
Yeah, and then the weed to bring me right down, and the coke to bring me back up, and then I got Ket involved. I always found it hard to pick up Ket. I didn't really know the right dealers, but when I did, I threw that into the mix, and then it was, you know.
You know, it's very interesting because, you know, I talk to a lot of people and I see lots of clients, and I have thousands of people that make comments on my social media now. And there's this very commonality between these people of having an all or nothing mentality.
Sure.
Do you think you have an all or nothing mentality?
I think that's deep rooted within me. I think I struggle to kind of see the grey area between the black and white. And it definitely played out in my using, because I could not stop. And I wanted everything all the time. I think, you know, now having been through recovery and you know, a long period of abstinence, I definitely am better with it, but I still find myself now, you know, even in relationships, financially, with work, whatever it is, I want everything or I don't want it at all.
You're either all in or nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I get that. I'm like that. And you're using, I know that you, we touched on this when we spoke previously to this podcast, led you down the path of gambling as well. Talk to me about that.
So I would say gambling was the thing that really brought me to my knees. I was using heavily, and, you know, had the bright idea of that's the way to make money that I needed to use, was to gamble. I'm not into sport. I don't know blackjack, or I went online. I found the easiest most comfortable way to do it, which was slots on my phone.
Oh,
And that was a killer.
painful.
Yeah, really, really painful. I would spend hours locked away in a dark room in my bedroom on my phone, just spinning until I had nothing left to
So
spin.
it's like racking up a line,
Yeah.
sitting on your own,
Yeah.
in your bedroom,
Yeah.
in the dark, on the phone,
Yeah.
spinning.
Yeah, exactly that. And, you know, the interesting thing is I never gambled when I wasn't on coke. It just didn't interest me at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think if I didn't gamble, I probably would have had quite a long time left of using in me. But it was the gambling that really brought everything to a head, because I had huge amounts of debt. I'd stolen money, I'd borrowed money, you know, I had nowhere left to turn, so I really was up against the wall. And that is when I don't want to say I made the decision, because I didn't really make it. I didn't have a choice to make it. Well, I had two choices to make, but I made the decision to kind of come clean. And
How long after starting to using did this spiral to the point where you made the decision to come clean?
So I did coke when I was 21, and I went to treatment when I was 26.
Okay, so for a 5-year period
for a
of time.
5-year period.
Here's an interesting question, because, you know, you're a young, good-looking boy going out with your friends. I know the area you live because I live there. You know, you went out, partied, things like that, and you never touched it to 21.
Yeah.
And you must have seen other people around you taking it. Why did you never try it before?
I think I was quite a naive and I want to say innocent young person. I think I had a lot of fear about it and about what it could do. I didn't really know anything about it. I'd actually never really been around it other than weed. I'd never really seen someone rack up a line or
Really?
You know, I wasn't that sociable, so I wasn't really in the right circles. I'd heard about people doing it, and you know, people I knew had tried it and did it, whatever, but I never really found myself there until that day. So, you know, would I have been around it earlier? I probably would have tried it, but it wasn't something that I sought. So it never really happened.
Just going back to the slot machine, online gambling on your phone, sitting at home, racking up lines. I hear this a lot, and you said a really interesting thing. I would never have thought about doing this unless I was on it.
Yeah.
You know, that's exactly what it was, right? You had this, what I call state-dependent alert memory behavior. In other words, an association between using and doing X, Y, or Z, which was gambling.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I was chasing the rush and the high, and you know, when the coke starts to wear off, you're still spinning, and so you've still got that kind of that rush that you're searching for, and kind of like you say, then all I associated doing coke with was gambling, so I couldn't do the two things. I couldn't not do the two things.
Yeah.
So whenever I was using, I had the urge to gamble. Even if I was out, I'd go sit in the toilet. When I was on the toilet, I'd just whip out my phone and start gambling, even if it was for a 5-minute period. It was any chance I could get.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you develop an association with using gear, I think you're going to continue on doing that, whether that's watching porn, whether that's gambling, whatever the extra vice is, they then become, you know, tied together.
Sure.
It's funny because I had a client only the other week who was talking to me about using the slots while using, and he said a typical thing where he only remembers the wins, and he's chasing that win. And he said to me, I win money, and I said, well, yeah, but if you took over what you spent in a year and what you lost in a year, are you winning?
Yeah, I wish I could only remember the wins, because I certainly don't. It was a loss from day one, and it's you know, I've always said that I think gambling is the most dangerous, because you know, you can go on a bender on a Saturday night, you have Sunday to recover, Monday you kind of start again fresh. You know, you blow all your money on at the first of the month, you're done. Like what are you going to do? I used to get paid on a Friday, and on the Monday I'd be $3,000 in my overdraft and have the whole month to worry about.
Wow.
So for me, that was that's the killer. You know, I could see how it leads to suicide, how it leads to those horrendous situations, because I was very much there. You know, I took out 2 payday loans. I pawned, I pawned a watch that I got for my 18th birthday. You know, all of these things that I deeply cared about, I lost all of it with not a care in the world.
Because you're using, which is making you gamble,
Yeah.
and now you're chasing that,
Yeah.
and everything else disappears.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a dark path, isn't it?
The darkest, really the darkest. Yeah.
Okay. And so at what point did you come out of denial and wake up and go, I've got a problem?
So I found myself working for a company, a lovely kind of startup business with really great people, and I'd just gotten the job, and about 3-4 months in, an ex-girlfriend of mine broke up with me, and we worked in a WeWork office, and in WeWork, I don't know if you know much about WeWork.
I've seen the film.
Yeah, they have something called the wellness room.
Okay.
So and you book the wellness room depending on, you can have an hour's slot to kind of chill in there at lunchtime. So I would book.
Was it like you just go in this room and sit in there?
So yeah, there's a little sofa, there's
Right.
a TV, whatever. I would book the wellness room to go and get on it on my lunch break.
Oh, wow.
So I found myself one day sitting in this wellness room, with not a penny to my name, doing lines, and I had 2 options. One option was to take my own life. That was a very viable option. And the other option was to do what I do best, which is call my mum
Okay.
and tell her that I need help. So I did the latter, thankfully. And
What was your mum's response?
I actually can't remember. I'm not sure it was positive.
Okay. I'm sure she wasn't waving the flags and you are.
No. I think she saw it coming. But from that moment, the wheels were in motion for me to get better. Within a week, I was booked in to a treatment program. I had started sessions with an addiction therapist who was the clinical advisor to the treatment program. And the treatment program wasn't for like another month, so they wanted to start me doing something so
Sure.
that it was kind of relatively kept under
Some
control.
structure.
Yeah, some structure. And then it was all systems go from there to kind of get me better.
So you told mum.
Yeah,
She, along with you,
yeah,
have found a place to go to.
Yeah.
You started some sessions.
yeah.
And
I surrendered all my bank accounts, bank
you
details.
gave your mum all your bank cards.
Gave her everything.
And then you told your brothers.
Yeah.
What was their reaction?
Again, I think they were expecting it. I think there was probably a lot of relief, and a lot of sadness because, it really impacted my brothers, my older brother, Ariel, especially. He kind of took on the father role because we lived together. So, there'd be nights where he'd come into my room while I was sleeping to check that I was still alive. A lot of things like that. So I think it was a relief, but it was the start of a long journey. I think they knew that it wasn't quite over yet. And I didn't actually stop using until a couple of weeks into treatment.
Okay.
And funnily enough, I didn't tell my therapist or anyone, I believe, that it was actually about the coke. I told everyone that it was the gambling that was the issue.
Oh.
And then about a week into treatment, I got drug tested, which came as a shock to me for some reason. And then obviously my test wasn't clean, and that's when I had to really get on it.
Why did you do that? Why did you? That was better.
Because
than
I
the
thought
other.
I could keep something back for myself, and I thought the drugs I could keep back for myself.
So like
give them the gambling.
you surrendered part of you,
Correct.
But part of you was like, "Fuck,
Yeah,
I don't want to stop."
Yeah.
using.
I needed it. It was my medication. I needed it to survive. The gambling.
Needed it.
Yeah, I definitely needed it. I didn't know another way to live without it. So I gave over a little bit of the gambling.
So at that point,
Yeah.
on the rationale side, knowing that I only gamble when I use,
Yeah.
and if we deal with the gamble,
Yeah. There was no rationale. There was no rationale.
Because you're not the sort of person that goes out gambling at other times.
Yeah, there was no rationale. I was scared, and I was, again up against the wall, and I needed to give over something because there must be a reason why my life is falling apart.
Okay.
And that was the most palatable, I think.
Okay.
Between the gambling and the drug problem.
Palatable for you or for your family?
Probably for me.
Okay.
I was deeply ashamed of being a drug addict. Coming from a nice family, a loving family, middle class, went to nice schools, had nice things, lived in nice houses. I couldn't be a drug addict.
Oh.
So, but gambling, gambling's cool. Gambling's
Everybody
great.
gambles,
Exactly.
right? There's a bookie on every corner.
Correct. There's one outside my flat.
Is there?
Yeah, not anymore. It closed down, but yeah.
Okay. It's because you
Yeah.
stopped going.
Yeah.
I'm joking. It's funny. I've never been into gambling.
Yeah.
I've used copious amounts of stuff in my lifetime, but never gambled. And there's a very interesting reason why I never gambled. My grandfather was from the East End of London.
Yeah.
I only ever met him about 3 times in my life when I was very young. A little bit of bit of an East End, dodgy dealing, selling second-hand cars, that kind of guy. But he was a gambler, big-time gambler. And I remember being about, I'd say, 9 years old. Met my grandfather for the first time. And he says to me, "Do you gamble?" I'm like a 9-year-old child. I said, "No, Granddad, I don't gamble." And he said, "Let me tell you something about gambling." And I don't know if this is true today, right? He said, if you go to the bookies, how many windows are there for you to put your bet on? How many windows? And I was like, "I don't know, Granddad." And he's like, "There's 3 windows you can go into the bookies to put your bet on." I was like, okay, still scratching my head. And he said, "Grandson, how many windows do you think you can go to get paid out?" And I was like, 3, Granddad. And he was like, "No, 1.
Interesting.
He said, "What does that tell you? If there are 3 windows to take your money and 1 window to pay out,
Interesting.
that must tell you something." And that story somehow just stuck in my head.
Interesting.
It's amazing how things just store in there.
That's good.
Yeah. So you were still in denial at that point because you thought, I can give up my gambling, but keep using my gear.
Yeah, I was in denial for a long time, and I was massively manipulative. I was, the best liar. I was super convincing. I could, there were times where my brothers found empty baggies, and I'd tell them it wasn't mine. In my bedroom, in my bedroom drawer. In my bedroom drawer.
How did you get away with that?
Because I think when people don't want to believe something, it's easier to convince them.
That's
but
true.
also I'd been doing it for so long. I'd turn the tears on, or I'd kind of taken this role within my family dynamic of being the kind of downtrodden son, the downtrodden brother, the one that doesn't have that many friends and never has that much money and whatever. So I could pull on the heartstrings and get away with it. And it was only until I met my therapist at the treatment center, who's still my therapist now,
Nice.
that she told me to cut the shit.
That's
Those are her words. Cut the shit.
That's the kind of therapist I like. I like that. No bullshit.
And I was showed the little drug test.
Yeah.
With the line saying Coke, and she's like, "Cut the shit. Like you can't get out of this situation." And there was even a situation where I had used with someone that I was in treatment with,
I hear
and that was a real turning point for me because we were both sat down. This person denied it, and I came clean, and I owned up to it. She was asked to leave the treatment center, and I was allowed to stay. And for me, that is when I really started to get honest. And it's something quite common that is said in the rooms and in this sort of space, and that's your secrets keep you sick. I had so many secrets, and it was only until I started letting them go that I started to get better.
It's very true.
It couldn't be more true for me personally.
Because when you're using, you can allow those secrets to go round and round in your head.
Yeah.
And you're just having that within yourself, and it's a safe space.
Yeah.
Even though it's detrimental to your well-being.
Sure.
and now all of a sudden you're deciding that, I'm going to air these.
And it feels good, it's when you're keeping all of these things inside, it's dark and it's scary. And as soon as, I'll never forget something that another therapist said. She was talking about her daughter, and she kind of tried to explain like why it's better to talk about things. And she said, if you're in your bedroom at night and the light's off, there might be monsters under the bed. It's dark and it's scary and you don't really know what's around. If you turn the light on, it's the space that you're familiar with, it's safe and it's comforting, and it's the same as talking about things. You let them out into the light, they're not as scary, they're not as kind of overwhelming, and that's something that's really stuck with me that I've definitely found in the past 4 and a bit years. I've had many challenges, and there's been many things that I've had to talk about and kind of deal with that have always felt better once I've spoken about them, because when you're keeping them inside, they turn into something, they turn into bigger monsters that actually they're never supposed to be.
You're shining a light on them now.
Yeah.
And listen, we all have problems, we all have our fuck it days when things don't go right. Whereas before you would turn to using to escape from those problems.
Yeah.
Now that you're clean, how do you deal with those problems?
I mean, there's a whole array of things that I do in order to stay well, from medication, from regular therapy, from meditation. Tattoos became a big thing for me. Obviously, I'm a tattoo artist.
Tell me about that. How did that come about?
So I got my first tattoo when I was 17.
Yeah,
and
me too.
Okay, nice. And I didn't have any until I was 26, until I got clean. I didn't have any more until I got clean. And I think part of it was taking ownership of myself and my body, and learning to make decisions that felt right for me. And I didn't really have to ask for that permission, because I was quite, like I said before, I was quite a naive young person, but I was also quite babied and quite immature, and I was never comfortable with making my own decisions. And I remember I was going to get a tattoo, and I'd called my mum to ask her.
Ask her permission?
Ask her permission, and I was 26, right?
Okay.
Which is not a normal thing to do. And then after I spoke to my mum, I called my therapist and I asked her for her permission.
You asked your therapist?
I asked my therapist
to have a tattoo.
Correct. And she said to me, you're fucking 26 years old. You want the tattoo, you go and get that tattoo. Doesn't matter. As long as you're not hurting anyone else and you're not hurting yourself, go and do what feels right. And so I think a part of my tattoos was learning to make decisions, albeit permanent ones. Thankfully, none of them have been that bad. I think there was,
right.
They're not bad. I also think there was an element of it which was, I don't want to say self-harm, but definitely an element of that. Ooh. Because the pain is a big distraction.
Yeah.
The pain and the kind of act of getting a tattoo becomes quite addictive in itself.
That's true.
I remember reading something that explains about how tattoos kind of almost show some level of emotional immaturity. It's kind of like drawing on yourself at school and kind of defacing your body,
Okay.
Whatever the opinions are on that. So I think there's a lot of things that kind of led me down that. They became really liberating for me. It was the first time that I was able to take ownership of who I was and what I wanted without it being detrimental. And it's something that I enjoyed, and I appreciate the art, and now it's given me an incredible career. Relationships are something that I struggled with. Fantasy is a big one for me. Love addiction and kind of and sex and love avoidance and sexual anorexia, and all of these things have massively played a part in my journey. But I work harder than ever now to keep all my ducks in a row.
What do you think you're addicted to now?
I think work.
See, that's the interesting thing. I believe that the majority of people who had an addiction to gambling, to using drugs, have a propensity to have an addictive disposition.
Yeah.
Whether it's genetics, whether it's nature, whether it's nurture inside themselves. I know I look at myself. I'm certainly addicted to exercise. You know,
Yeah.
I like to go to the gym. I've trained forever. And I think, I'm addicted to work. I work a tremendous amount of hours, you know, and I'm passionate about it. So I think it's about not necessarily not becoming addicted, but honing your addiction into something that's positive, beneficial, and useful. What do you think about that?
I think the term addictive personality bothers me.
Okay.
Because for me, I would never say I have an addictive personality. I would say I have an issue with feelings, and it's feelings that I struggle with. So whether that is positive feelings or negative feelings, if you want to call them negative feelings, they're actually, in my opinion, are neither. They're just feelings. But it's those that I struggle to manage, and so I'm always trying to find a way to avoid them. And the ways that I have to avoid them now are just less detrimental. And, you know, I think society looks at a work addiction as something quite positive. Oh, you're a hard worker. You get congratulated for it. You know, you're able to kind of reap the rewards financially and all of those things. But I'm still trying to escape from my feelings because, you know, on my days off, I work on the weekends and sometimes during the week, and my days off are during the week. So there's not that much to do. I struggle massively to kind of sit and be.
How do you fill that void?
I don't really, because I don't want to fill the void. I'm really trying to learn to sit with my feelings,
Right.
and to not try and escape them and
Be in the moment.
be in the moment. Yeah, and you know, I do a lot of meditation, and I always thought meditation sounds so wanky, but meditation for me is massively helpful. It allows me to be there and to kind of move through the feelings that I have and to come out the other side without having to escape from them. But for me, as long as I have feelings, I'm always going to want to escape from them. So I'm always going to have to try and manage, you know, the addictions that come with it, whether it's work, whether it's relationships, whether it's sex, whatever.
You're afraid of your feelings?
I'm not afraid of them. They've always just felt very big to me.
Okay.
They're big and unmanageable and all consuming. For me, that's the biggest thing. That's why I take medication. It's to manage my feelings, right? It's because the anxiety is too much. The sadness, you know, with the depression is too much. There's times where if I wasn't on antidepressants, the highs would also be a lot higher, which, you know, may lead me down the wrong path with using, because I'd think, you know, I'd feel excited, I'd feel, you know, a lot of happiness and stuff, and maybe that would be detrimental too. I don't know. So a lot of my life now is about managing how I feel.
Balance.
Yeah. Moderation.
Okay. Yeah, moderation.
Yeah.
I know when we were speaking prior to coming on, we touched on the fact that, you know, you still drink alcohol, but in moderation. And I kind of I picked up on that, and I'll tell you why, because, you know, I had a problem with using gear for many, many years on a huge scale, you know. Alcohol was never an issue for me.
Yeah.
And I still drink occasionally.
Yeah.
Like I went to Tenerife about a month ago with my son, who's 24, my oldest boy. Just a week dad and son time, because I believe in that quality time. And I had like 2 pina coladas when I was on holiday. You know, I might have like, I don't know, a glass of wine once every few months, 3, 4, 5, 6 drinks in a year.
Yeah.
But that doesn't lead me to want to do anything else. Talk to me about that.
So I didn't drink for 4 and a bit years. I was completely abstinent from everything. And, you know, I always heard this, you know, I didn't have a problem with alcohol. And I think because I was so invested in the 12-step fellowship, it was, you know, part of it is to be abstinent. Alcohol is a drug, as they teach you.
Anything mind-altering, they say.
Anything mind-altering, correct. I did the 4 years, and towards the end of the 4 years, I started to look back at where I'd been and where I'd come from. And, you know, I was about to turn 30, and I turned 30 in September, and I kind of made the decision that I didn't want to live the rest of my life in abstinence. I wanted to live a life of moderation. And I felt really strongly about it. And it's weird because when I talk to people about it, I feel like I'm trying to convince them that I'm okay.
Okay.
But, you know, throughout that 4-year period, I thought about using all the time. I had using dreams. I'd go out and I'd have to leave certain places because I couldn't quite trust myself, or, you know, the feelings of wanting to use would bubble up and whatever. But since I have allowed myself to drink, and again, I don't drink a lot. I can go on a night out and have 1 glass of wine. I don't get hammered. I don't like the feeling of being drunk. I have not once had a using thought since I've started drinking. And the way that I look at it is that I've been through so much in the last 4 years, and I was kind of talking to you about this before we're doing the podcast. There's not a single aspect of my life that's the same as it was when I was using. So for me, the pain is no longer there. The need to escape is no longer there. You know, the difficulty with feelings is there, but I have many other ways to manage them now. And using is just not an option. It's not an option. I have too much to lose. I have too much self-respect. I have too much pride to, you know, to go back to my family and say that I've used. You know, all of these things add up. Using I have no interest in that whatsoever. But what I do have an interest in is exploring my own limits within reason, because I'm never going to do coke again. But, you know, with alcohol, I want to see if I'm able to have a better time when I'm out with my friends by having a drink. Most of the time I'm not, because, you know, because of my disposition and who I am. I'm always in my head so much anyway, it doesn't do anything to me. I've always liked drinking wine because, I don't know. But it's just something that I felt that I needed to do. You know, there was an element of it that my last relationship, I felt that it would make my relationship better if I was to kind of loosen up a little bit and explore a relationship with alcohol. It didn't work because my relationship ended, but I found that I'm very much able to moderate, and I have no shame in that, and I have no issues with that.
I agree with you.
And I think, you know, I think some people that I still know that are still in the fellowship, some have been completely understanding, and, you know, they say, that's great for you. It's not for me, but, you know, you crack on, and if you're good, then that's great. Some people haven't been so understanding, and I think that's the nature of the fellowship. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of, you know, If
you're in a group, you're going to get multiple views.
Correct.
I mean, I did a great analogy a while ago. I'm bigging myself up, great analogy. But I took a little glass dessert bar and I took a pickled onion and I put it in there and I said, this pickled onion represents your brain. And I took some pickled onion juice and I went, that's a glass of wine, or that's a pint of beer. And the pickled onion you could still see above the surface of the pickled juice. And I said, that's fine, in my opinion. I said, I think you have to go for a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever works for you, of abstinence from alcohol when you stop using. But you could reach a point where you're that pickled onion and your brain's still surfaced. You can still logically, rational make decisions. But if you keep pouring that pickled onion juice in until the pickle is submerged, until your brain can no longer think straight, your brain's pickled. You're going to make silly decisions.
Yeah. And the biggest thing for me was really that honesty, not with anyone else, but within myself, because I could easily convince myself that I can do a line again and not have an issue with it. But I know that that's not true. And so the only person I'd be lying to would be me. You know, I think, you know, I've grown a lot of trust within my family and my friends that they trust my decision making, so I could easily convince them that I don't have an issue. But the only person that's going to suffer, well, is everyone, but predominantly me. I'm going to lose everything that I've gained, and I don't want that. So, you know, coke is not an option, and it never will be an option.
That's great. You know what I say, Tal? I say it doesn't matter how far you drive, you're still the same distance from the side of the road. You know, it doesn't matter how long you've been clean for, how long you've been sober for, you're still the same distance from the road. You just got to keep going in the right direction.
Correct. Yeah.
So you know, we're going to wrap this up, but I want to ask you a couple of other things I've got here. Tell me, what difference do you notice in your life now being clean from using?
I think the biggest difference is my relationships, not necessarily romantic, but with my family. You know, I remember not that long ago my older brother saying that he doesn't worry about me anymore, which is a massive, massive thing for both him and me. And it means that I can, you know, my recovery is not only a gift for me, it's a gift for them, that I allow them space in their lives to worry about other things. So that's definitely a big thing. You know, my career's changed. I've gained so much clarity about who I am. I used to date women, now I date men. You know, everything in my life is different.
You found you.
I found me, and I'm the most me that I've ever been. You know, I got an ASD diagnosis about 7 months ago, which was a massive eye-opener, but it's allowed me to kind of shed the shit and really understand what's underneath all of it. And I'm still figuring it out. I'm still learning about myself. I'm still understanding and getting comfortable with who I am. But, you know, there's not a single aspect of my life that's the same as when I was using, in all the best ways. And I don't really want it to be, because my life was not good.
Shit.
Yeah, shit, yeah.
So my last question before we wrap up.
Yeah.
What advice would you offer someone who's listening to this, who's struggling with their own usage?
I knew you were going to ask me that, because I was thinking about it on my way here. And I think what I wanted to say was, if you're not ready, don't bother, because there's a lot of work and there's a lot of pain. Yeah. So if you're not ready, wait until you're ready. You know, keep looking for that rock bottom. But when you do find it, be honest, because honesty is the number one thing. And, you know, like they say in the fellowship, honesty, open-mindedness and willingness. Those three things are things that I practice daily. It's those that have allowed me to be where I am. And I've still got a long way to go. You know, no one's ever finished, or the recovery's never done, in my opinion. But be honest, be vulnerable, be brave, because it's fucking scary.
It's hard.
It's the hardest thing in the world.
It's,
you know,
fucking hard.
You're stepping into a boxing ring and you're facing yourself.
Yeah.
So you
I like that. You're stepping into a boxing ring and you're facing yourself.
It's true. You know, the only person you've got to beat is your own warped thinking and your own denial and whatever. And, you know, if I can do it as a bog standard run-of-the-mill drug addict with doing all the things that they say we're going to do, anyone can. I'm no special and different. It just takes hard work.
Fantastic. Before we finish, I'm going to just finish on something light-hearted, picking up on your tattoos.
Yeah.
So when I was 17, I had this fucking idea to get my first tattoo. So at 17, I'm 17 stone, because for anybody who knows back home, I started training very young because of what happened in my life. Anyway, so I'm this big guy, 17 stone, going to a tattoo place, have my first tattoo. I have a devil that size on my fucking arm. About a week later, I'm thinking, what the fuck did I do? I'm this big lump with a tiny little devil. It looks a bit like a Manchester United, because I don't follow football. And someone goes, oh, you follow Manchester United? It's like, what? It took me 20 years before I had it covered up.
Amazing. You should have got an angel on the other side.
It's true.
Yeah.
Tal, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.